actually working. Thank you, everyone. Kia ora. It is amazing to be here. I'm really thrilled. Should I be close to the mic? No, good. Okay. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm very grateful for the invite. And so I have a lot to cover, so I'm just gonna get right into it. I've been around the tech industry for, in a sense, almost as long as the tech industry has been around in terms of the web, and I've learned a lot over the years. And I'd love to share, the things I've learned and some of the experiences I've had, and hopefully kind of inspire maybe other people to, if you haven't done a startup and been involved in a startup, get involved. And so actually, that's the first thing I want to know is like, who here is involved in a startup or has been involved in a startup in some way or another? Right, good, great, okay. And then, so who's actively currently in a startup right now? Great. And then in terms of what you do in these startups, this is actually everyone. So in terms of engineer, coders, people, anyone here? No? Okay. Design people? No? Marketing people? Okay. And so business people would be the broad category. Anyone else want to shout out what they're, something I haven't mentioned? Anything? No? Scientist. Okay, great. That's a first, I think. Cool. So as I mentioned, I've been in this for quite a while, 25 years professionally in tech. And if you then throw in my, I started coding at 12 years old, so 40 years, if you want to count that. And the first job I got was actually in university. So I studied design at university, industrial design, which is hardware product design. There was no such thing as software design or UI, UX design when I was a kid. And so I landed an internship at a company called General Magic. And General Magic was trying to build the iPhone in 1992 when I started there. And it's an amazing company. It's an amazing story. And in fact, so they just released a documentary about it last year that I highly, highly recommend everybody see this documentary. It's a really, the company is described as the most important startup nobody's ever heard of. And so it did spawn the iPhone. The people that were there created the iPhone and created Android and various other platforms as well. And so from there, I started my own business, and my first client was the Beastie Boys. And so that was kind of launched my career and my professional career, really. And so that was an amazing experience. And then I had lots of clients and customers in Silicon Valley, and from Apple, so large companies to tiny little startups. And then lots of entertainment companies as well. Because the Beastie Boys kind of attracted lots of entertainment companies that wanted to work with us. And then I moved here in 99, 2001. And it was a combination of lots of things. George Bush was, kind of top of the list for that. And you can see what's happening in the US right now. I'm very glad to be here for all the obvious reasons. And so I worked at an agency for a little while, and then I wanted to do a startup. And so I reached out to a guy that was kind of in the startup community and, was looking for a mentor. And he and I hit it off. And so we started talking about doing a startup together, and that startup ended up being Zero. And so I was head of design, and I was there for nearly 10 years. And it was a pretty amazing experience. So lots of learnings from that as well. And then now, I took a few years off, and I was doing advisory work for a bunch of different startups and really enjoying that. And then one of those startups I got really engaged in and was really enjoying it and loving the customers, loving the problem. And so I decided to invest and join the company. And so I'm co-CEO of that company. And it's called Upstart. Well, it's currently called Automatic. any day now. It's about to change and be called Upstock. And it's wholesale ordering app for hospitality, where they, currently right now to order wholesale items, they, ring up, they text, they maybe will email, and it's a mess. It's everything scattered and nothing is actually, there's no visibility and there's no tracking on it. And it causes a lot of expensive errors. So we were like, software, we'll solve that problem. So some of the key things that I learned through those experiences, if I condense it down into kind of the main things, was that to invent your dream job. That's what I had to do when, I got out of school, or while I was in school. It wasn't my dream job. I wanted to work with computers and I wanted to do software design, and that didn't exist. And so I was doing design and the closest thing to it that I could find. And then I figured out a way to, kind of invent this career, invent this, industry in a way. I was part of inventing the industry, and that, nobody is going to offer you your dream job. That, I've never really heard of that happening, or it's an extreme rarity. And also, like I said, that job didn't exist at the time. It had to be invented. And so that's really the only way to make it happen. And you don't really get anything without asking, has also been my experience. And so when I'm dreaming big. I'm dreaming, what is the ultimate? Let's start there and we can, scale back. But if we're dreaming little, then it's, okay, you achieve that. But, have you really done anything that really has made a big impact on your life and other people's lives? So, those are kind of the high level things. So I'm here kind of promoting the idea of doing startups. I love startups. I believe in them deeply. And, having just, ended a big startup and, kind of took some time off, these were all the things I was feeling about. I don't want to do another startup. It's scary. It's risky. It's incredibly challenging. It's all consuming, and it's exhausting. And why would I want to do that? Until I realized, oh yeah, I already do that. That's called being an adult. And I'm already, experiencing all those things. Anything I do, not doing a startup is risky. I'm not making any money. I wasn't earning that much money while I was losing money. I was spending money. And it's challenging and exhausting to kind of not know what you're doing, and just kind of be floundering around. And so at any kind of point in anyone's lives, pardon me, it's really exhausting to, just be an adult and figure things out day to day. So I love this quote from a local legend, pro surfer Ricardo Christie. I saw it on his Instagram a little while ago, and he says, better to take a risk going for what you want than settling for what you don't want. And, that sums it up perfectly for me. Like, why would you settle for something that you don't want? Why would that be of value to you? And, the other thing to point out about this is that, as I said, it's just as hard either way. The big difference is the reward. The upside for taking a big risk is an enormous reward. The upside for playing it safe, quote unquote, and I don't believe there's anything that you can really play safe that realistically, but the reward is not that compelling, is not that impactful. So, the reward is much, much higher. That's the massive difference. And another great thing, we just raised some money and we were talking to lots of investors, and one investor mentioned this that I thought was, quite insightful and resonated with me, which is, it's just as hard to do a small scale business as a large scale business. Again, it's the same principle that, it's just as much work. So you might as well go for the thing that will, have the bigger impact, have the bigger result. So let's think about it on as through an example. So being an Uber driver, right? That's a small scale business. You're running a business as an Uber driver. It's grueling hard work. You're building and running a business. You have constant challenges of making more money than you spend is, just an ever-present challenge. You have a constant learning curve of, what are the best times, what are the best spots, where how to communicate, how to brand yourself, what do you do with your car, how do you talk to customers, all those things. You're your own startup, really, and you have all the things you have to do, all the things a startup has to do. Except the reward for all that work is, a few coins in your pocket at the end of the day. You're not going to do really well, and you're not going to have a big impact on your life or the people around you. It's not that huge. Meanwhile, the reward for Uber is billions of dollars. So, do you want to be the Uber driver, or do you want to be the, building the Uber platform? So, as you can tell, my view is, why wouldn't you do a startup? It seems like put in that light, it's kind of a no-brainer. You get to invent the future, you write the rules, and this is the thing about any endeavor, really. Like, I don't think people assume that people like me with experience know what you're doing. It changes all the time. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have to, again, reinvent everything. The technology is changing, the landscape is changing, the market is changing. So I'm just as, terrified and inexperienced as everyone else. So doing a startup, the worst case is that you've had a lot of fun doing something. You've gained a lot of skills, and you've made some incredibly valuable connections. So that's the worst outcome. There is, I'm maybe simplifying that, you might lose some money. The best case, but again, you can be smart about that and avoid doing that. The best case is that you change the world and you make a fortune while you're sleeping. That's a huge upside. The downside is pretty minimal. The upside is pretty massive. And it's much easier, in my view, and in my experience, and more fun than building an asset for someone else. So again, that Uber driver is building an asset for somebody else. They're building a multi-billion-dollar asset for Uber. I think that that's pretty tragic, really, in many ways. Okay, so let's say I might have convinced you that doing a startup might have some benefits and might be worth considering. Okay, how do you do it? How do you get started? So first off, you're here, and so you're doing the exact right thing. You're getting immersed, you're getting involved, you're part of the community. And so the things that I found, again, throughout my career, it's just been a constant, is getting involved in these conferences and meetings and meetups, in startup weekends, incubators, startup weekends in particular. Has anyone here done a startup weekend? Cool, that's good. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is, it's a weekend where you create a team, you create an idea, you build this close approximation to a product, and you go through literally all the things that you would need to do in the real world in a very condensed amount of time. But it is a very, very true to my experience simulation of doing a startup. With high highs and low lows, but it really, the kind of the roller coastery moments where you're like, I don't know what we're doing. We've got a presentation to get through in 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden it kind of just falls into place. And it's thrilling and it's really exciting, and you just learn heaps. So highly recommend that. Then the other thing to do is learn and play through, actually building things. So copywriting, learning to code, learning to design. I think that everyone, my personal opinion is everyone in the world should know some degree of those things. And in some senses, everyone in the world kind of does those things already. If you're sending emails, you're copywriting. If you're posting anything on social media, you're copywriting. And code, these days, the way that, I'm just trying to think of a great example, but there are ways that in ways we're coding, we're connecting applications. So when you connect zero to another application, that's a sort of a form of coding. And coding, is one of these things that it's a language that, if you just learn the basics. And so this is the thing, I'm not saying everyone needs to get an engineering degree. I'm saying learn the basics of coding, make something. And it is the most intoxicating feeling in the world when you code something and then boom, it works. And the crazy thing is that it works and the whole world can, interact with it. You can share that with the whole world. That to me, like, people do have this sensation of, first of all, when you're struggling and it's not working, you feel horrible. You feel just like completely like smashing things. But then the thrill of when you actually get it to work, you feel like God. You feel like you're omnipotent and you are just capable of doing anything and everything. And so just, building something, but build something real. And so my recommendation, always is your own website, a website promoting you. So websites are super easy to build. It involves copywriting, involves a little bit of code, and it involves design. And so that is something that really, you have a vested interest in. That's something that is tangible and that has a real impact on you and, the things that you want to do. So that's the easiest and kind of most focused way to do something. And again, you're just starting small. Literally build one page. It's, it's so doable. So, beyond that, so once you've kind of got a taste, that feeling, the addictive feeling of being God for a minute, you'll want more, and it's just addictive. And so then how do you go from there? How do you actually turn something into a business? And so, to me, that there is a pretty, tried and true formula, which is you have to find a real problem that, it sounds so obvious, but it's amazing how many people find problems that aren't really problems. They might be a minor problem to them personally, but aren't actually problems that other people are experiencing, and certainly not that other people are experiencing on a massive scale. And it's been really interesting, like in a way, the easiest things to identify as a problem and that you can identify as on a massive scale is anytime people are doing things by paper or they're doing things by spreadsheets. That's just, there should be software for that. Those are broken processes that are screaming out for software to have it connected and have it, be able to interact with that data, interact with other systems, with other people, so that data is a lot smarter and a lot more organized and structured in a smart way. So, accounting is if you think about tedious, mundane, repetitive things, accounting is the most tedious, mundane, repetitive thing possibly in the world. It's been the butt of jokes for, decades, if not centuries. And then same thing with the new business, Upstock. We found this thing that people are doing through texts and phone calls, and it's just screaming out for this. It's inevitable. This will be software. And so the only question is who's going to build it and how is it going to actually manifest? So once you think you've found a real problem, the next thing is to start validating that and researching that, and going out and talking to people is the first and most important thing to do. Once you think you have an idea, is start talking to people and asking, do they have this problem? What about this problem? Describe it to me. And, you know, so when you do that, you need great listening skills. You need to really avoid putting words in their mouth, stepping on them when they're trying to explain something and you're like, yeah, yeah, I know. No, just listen, 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 and just prompt and just say, you know, the best thing you could possibly do is say, why? Really? Okay, so that's a problem. Why is that a problem? And just keep asking why and tell me more about that. And people will just, you know, reveal everything to you. And that's, you just get incredible insights through that. Um, the other thing that, you know, I've observed again throughout my career is that people hate technology. Um, I do. It's been my whole career, my whole life has been based on technology, and I hate it. It's a miracle that this, you know, works. You know, I'd say 7 times out of 10, you know, something goes wrong and doing a presentation doesn't work and there's glitches. It's, you know, kind of notorious. And so when you're observing, you can see the workarounds that people do. That they, you know, for instance, I brought my adapter here because you know, I've been to enough presentations where there may not be an adapter on hand, and so that's a workaround. That's an interesting insight about how people solve these problems. Um, and then, you know, the other universal thing is to simplify, to take away problems for people. Don't add to their problems. And this is why technology is such, you know, why people hate it, because it actually adds problems. I have to know technology. I have to know how the software works. It doesn't work the way I want it to or the way I think it does. So the ultimate simplification is one magic button. And so what do I mean by that one magic button? If you think about a light switch here in the room, it's one magic button. I push it and I turn the light on and light comes, and then I switch it the other way and light goes away. I don't need to know how light bulbs work and how, you know, filaments work or how electricity works or the electric grid that makes it all possible. I don't need to know any of that. I flick a button and it just works. And another really amazing example, and think how old, ancient that technology, ancient by our standards. And then another one that's, you know, pretty much just as old is the camera. So before, you know, the first iterations of the camera were these, you know, you had to be a scientist. You could have worked the camera back in the day. And so you had to know chemistry. You needed to know how to actually mix chemicals and do plates. And, you know, it was a very expensive, very sophisticated, very temperamental process. And then Eastman changed all that and created the Brownie camera. And the advertising slogan for the Brownie camera was, you click the button, we do the rest. Literally, the advertising slogan was one magic button. And that revolutionized photography. All of a sudden, anyone could do photography, and people could have photographs. And so with the Brownie camera, the magic was it was a self-contained camera. You couldn't open it. You couldn't do anything with it. Think of, you know, the iPhone, you can't open it. You can't do anything with it. It's a sealed box. And you send that back to the factory and you get photos in return several days later, or maybe it was weeks, I'm not even sure. Then fast forward to the 70s, Polaroid. They innovated on that, and you push a button and magically a photograph is in your hand instantly. And so that was a huge sensation and a huge impact on photography and family memories. And then now our equivalent, or the next iteration, the next big innovation is Instagram, where you take a photo and you can instantly share that, or a video, and everyone in the world and everyone that you're connected to can see it that second. And that's insane when you think about it. When you just one button and poof, the whole world can see this image. And if you think about the riots going on in the US right now and how powerful it is to see those images, you know, and to see them in real time and how that changes, you know, power structures in the world and changes politics, it's an incredible feat. And So these are just kind of the fundamentals. Um, but the secrets to success that I have found are having fun. And having fun is absolutely the only way that you can really do something that's enduring, that you can actually stick with, and that actually has an impact. If you think about like uh, phone companies, for instance, people hate phone companies. People hate working in phone companies. They're miserable because they have a miserable experience. They're a misery machine. They're in the misery business. Um, so they're really, their margins are anyway. I'm, I'll leave that alone. So in my view, fundamentally your job is to figure out how to make your job the coolest, most interesting, the funnest job in the entire world. And so whenever you're kind of hitting the skids and you're grinding things out and you're saying, why am I doing this? And what, this sucks. Your job right at that moment is to figure out how am I going to have fun doing this? How am I going to turn this into something fun? Because if you're miserable making it, it's a guarantee that your customers are going to be miserable experiencing it, interacting with that product. And you're just like, this sucks, I hate it. And you're going to do a crappy job and your customers are going to have a crappy experience. And who wants that? You're spreading misery and you're feeling miserable. Why not, figure out how to make it fun? And then it really, it's something that you can endure with. And so, you're aiming to live the dream, right? And I really thank you, Malcolm, for inviting me. I went out surfing this morning. I feel like I am living the dream. It's magic. It's absolute magic. And so the first thing you need to figure out is, what is the dream? And so when I went into this new company, one of the criteria was I need to be able to have time to surf. That is definitely, part of the dream and part of the plan. And so I intentionally, I went into it with intention, and then all of a sudden you can make that a reality. If you go into it with just like winging it and, not having a plan, then things will happen. So the other aspect of that, and that often gets overlooked, is your values. And I've heard it over and over again from companies I'm advising. They're like, that's for big companies to do. And then they make posters along the walls and, they violate every one of their values. Values are so important, especially when you're starting out. They're critical when you're starting out. They really they all of a sudden make decision-making very quick and easy, because you know your values and you can say, I'm hiring this person because they align with these values, or more importantly, I'm not hiring this person because they don't align with these values. And all of a sudden, a decision that's made really early on will have a huge impact on the trajectory of your business. Your business, if you hire that person, the business can go this way. If you hire this other person, it can go that way. And at this point, at that decision-making point, it doesn't seem like as huge, a factor. But when you extend it out to like, where is this business going? Again, if it's aligned with your values, if you have this view of where you want to go and what you want to achieve, and how you want to achieve that, then you in a way, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up doing that. And so imagining how the world is going to be better for after you do what you do. So imagining this dream world, like, what is the ideal outcome? Ideal outcome for me personally, for my family, for my teammates, for this business, for my customers, and for the community I live in, the country I live in, the planet I live in. Really thinking about what is the ultimate outcome here. Again, you can scale things back, and you're not going to necessarily do all those things, although you'd be surprised when you look back at, holy shit, I actually did all those things that I was aiming to do. And so I strongly recommend writing a manifesto that is, what are my values? What is the dream? What what does it look like when all these things come true? And that is so powerful. And when you look back on it, and I constantly refer to it, especially in times of, where you have to make a decision. And so, like, we did this with investors. Like, are we going to bring this investor on? We could get the money right now, but that investor doesn't align with our values, and having them on is toxic. It's just, it will poison our business. We do not want to have them on in the business. And so it just makes those decisions much easier, and also much, more easier to communicate with the rest of your team, because everyone's aligned and bought into the values. And again, those values are in a business are constantly evolving as people come into the business. So, okay, you're on your way, and you found a problem, and you think you have a good solution, but how do you turn that into a business? That, that really is the objective here, is to turn it into a business, so that it actually can achieve all those things that you want. And so we've talked ad nauseum, and I will continue to talk ad nauseum about finding a real problem. And really the ultimate proof is when somebody pays you. And so that is a very important indicator that you have discovered a real problem. And again, it's not just that they'll pay you, it's that there's lots of people like them that will also pay you, and that amount of money scales up relative to the cost of doing business. And so those, all of a sudden, you have to start measuring these things, engaging, the price point, and these, there is a whole science to these things, and there's this kind of like fear of like, I don't know about price. I don't know about pricing, and nobody, even the scientists, even the experts, really ultimately at the end of the day, there's nothing that compares with actually going out there and doing it and testing it and finding out and adjusting. And so the great thing about when you start out and doing, for instance, pricing, is you're going to get it wrong. So that you go into it knowing you're going to get it wrong, and that you're, figuring out where is it wrong, what's wrong, and how do I adjust and adapt it. And so, to get the ball rolling and to start, just get some momentum, as I said, even with pricing, for instance, just try something and just talk to people. You don't even have to build software. You just can start talking to people about pricing. If that is one of the things that you need to validate when you're, deciding, is this worth pursuing? Am I on the path to something that, I want to continue on? Is just gauging whether, that price point makes sense. And then test it, and then make it better, tweak it, change it, modify it. That is right there. That's startup. That's all you do every day, all day long, is make something, test it, make it better. That's just loop, 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 loop. And so one of the things, the other important thing that as you're, discovering and getting a little bit of momentum, is that you're looking for ways to de-risk things. And so one of the crucial ways of de-risking things is getting partners on board. So getting people involved that are smarter and more experienced than you. And so then you're sharing the problem. You've got people around you that can give you that feedback, and that you can bounce things off of. And that is, in and of itself, if you can get somebody to actually buy into your idea, buy into this plan, that is a very important validation point. If you can't, and if people are like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't think so, I don't want to be part of that, right there is a pretty interesting indicator that whether or not this is something worth pursuing. And, there are plenty of stories out there of people, everyone said it's a dumb idea and I shouldn't do it. And they persisted and made it work. And that is, certainly possible, but those are the kind of exceptions to the rule. The reality is that, like, you do need to get people on board to actually keep the momentum going. So, there's lots of, again, as humans, we are wired to find all the problems and to find all the reasons why we shouldn't take and do anything risky and avoid pain, avoid risk. And, you know, this fear of failure is one of the biggest ones. And especially, like, we were talking about this at dinner last night, that, you know, after doing zero, it was terrifying for me, like, okay, what's next? And that, you know, what if I fail on my next thing? That really is not, you know, it doesn't feel great and all that. But again, it just comes back to, you know, me doing nothing is also failure. So, you know, and realizing that we're constantly failing. And that's why I love this Michael Jordan quote that, you know, he's missed more than 9,000 shots. He's lost 300 games. He's missed the game-winning shot, you know, tons of times. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And so that acceptance of failure is so key. That failure means that you're actually doing something. You're actually moving forward, and you don't let that failure stop you. You leverage that failure. You actually take that failure and find a way to turn that into an opportunity. Again, so if no matter what we do, we fail. That's called life. So I'd rather fail at something I love, doing something I love, rather than failing at something that I hate. You know, just like, who would sign up for that? But people do that every single day. That seems to be the norm. You know, fail at things I hate, and it's very easy to fail at things you hate. And the other really, really important thing is failure is relative. So some of my biggest failures are, in fact, my proudest moments and my biggest triumphs. So General Magic, I mentioned early on, that was my first professional experience in the tech industry. And so that company bombed spectacularly. I mean, they were trying to build an iPhone in 1992. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, fairly likely that they were going to bomb. And I actually knew it at the time when I was working there. The company was the original Macintosh team. So these were the gods of Silicon Valley. They created the Macintosh, and this was their next big thing. And they felt infallible. They were like the hubris coming off them. They're just like, whatever we do, whatever we touch is brilliant. And I came in there as an intern, and the first thing they did was user testing with me. They sat me down in front of this device and, you know, had me interact with it. And I was just screaming and just pounding the table, and I just hated everything about this device that they made, and not necessarily the hardware, but the software. The user experience was just mind-bogglingly bad. And so it was fascinating, and so I learned so many things by watching these people operate that felt like they're, and I was like, maybe they're right, maybe I don't get it. But one of the things I said, it was a conglomerate. They managed to do partnerships with lots of other companies. So they partnered with Apple, they partnered with Motorola, they partnered with Sony. And I got to be, you know, on a good relationship with the Sony team. And I said, you invented the Walkman. I want a Walkman that's digital in my pocket that I can listen to any song, anywhere, anytime. And they were like, oh, sorry, that's terrible, I shouldn't do that. But they were like, you're a little boy, that's cute, what you say. And yeah, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And then the other example is the Beastie Boys project. So that was, I still consider that one of the best projects I ever worked on, the most fun, some of the best work that I have ever done. I had total creative freedom, and I got to, you know, it was exactly this thing. Like, I got to do, my dream was to do a project with the Beastie Boys. I managed to somehow pull that off. I made it. Everyone loved it. It was a huge success, and the band killed it. Never got released. And we got into legal dispute with the band, and it was ugly, and it was awful. It was an awful, awful experience. And, you know, kind of really hit me hard for years. Well, not for, yeah, no, let's say years. certainly months. And just was kind of this really like, what the fuck just happened? And why did that happen? And it just blindsided me. And it was this awful experience. And yet I still hold that, like that launched my career. That, you know, had huge impact on my career, had huge impact. Like we were doing things with technology that nobody had done before. Apple had never done before. They were learning from us what we were doing, and other technology companies, Macromind was learning from the things we were doing. So it got us, you know, built up this amazing network, and it was just, again, it was this really high impact thing, but it didn't end well. But still, it has got me to where I am today. So that was a profound experience. It was a failure, but it's still, I hold it high as, you know, I'm so grateful and so glad that I had that experience. It's too expensive. You know, another thing, that is utter bullshit. That is, you know, don't even try that, because almost all of you presumably probably have a laptop. And to get a hosting account with AWS or somewhere else is all you need. That's about $15 a month. That is all you need. Everything else you can get for free. You can get Wi-Fi for free. You can get training for free. You can get software for free. All the software that I'm using is free. There's a free version of it everywhere for everything. And you can get, certainly you can get unlimited advice for free. Compare that to driving an Uber. If we keep going back to that example, that Uber driver has to buy a phone, has to buy, and so they probably, let's say they already have it. The car, they certainly have to buy and then maintain, and then they have to pay for petrol. That's way more expensive than you know, trying to build some software. And again, the reward is you know, magnitudes, just many magnitudes difference. But I don't have any experience. Like I mentioned earlier, neither do I. I don't have any experience because it's constantly changing. Everything's changing. The technology is changing. The market is changing. So I don't have any experience. I've never done software for hospitality. I've never done, you know, all the things that I'm doing now are things that I've never done. I've done variations of them in the past, and some things I've done similar, but the specific things that I'm doing now, I've never done before. I've never been CEO before. But more importantly, you don't, you know, genuinely, you don't even need to have any experience to do any of these things. So doing user research is one of these things that, again, this really sets good startups from bad startups, sets apart good startups and bad startups. Good startups are obsessed with user research and are constantly talking to customers and spending time with them and just observing them. And that's where you get all your insights. That's where all the innovation comes from. Is just, you saw, whoa, that person just did that. And you say, why did you just do that? And they explain, and they're like, so wait, what, you did that because this? And then you unravel this whole insight about why they're doing things and why it's connected and what their motivation is. And all of a sudden, so this was for bank reconciliation for me, when we were doing Xero, it was like, oh, so everything depends on your bank reconciliation. If you don't do that, you're never going to do your books, and your books are always going to be screwed up in a mess. So getting that right is absolutely essential. And if you're not doing it every day, it'll just go by the wayside. And if we can automate that, and if we can make that easy and magical, one click, and you say, okay, then, and you can reconcile your bank account, that's magic, and that's profound and powerful. And that was based on me. I didn't know anything about accounting except that I hated it, like most people, except people that are gluttons for punishment. And so that user research is also pre-sales. You're building relationships, you know, and it's a great way to, you know, I don't love sales. I don't love trying to hustle and get in the door. But getting in the door saying, hey, I'm doing research and I just like to interview and I just want to understand your business, is a much softer way to get in, and they're much more receptive, much more open. and you learn way more than you trying to push something onto them when you're there just to do research. Creating a survey. So this is how Sharesies, does everyone know Sharesies? Okay, Sharesies is another magic platform. It's you can start an investment portfolio for $5. That's all you need is the minimum order. So what they break shares down into fractional fractions so that you can buy a portion of a share rather than having to buy Google at 900 or whatever $2,000 it costs. You can buy $5 worth of Google and build a portfolio that way. And the way they started out was a survey on Facebook. And they managed to get, again, validate their idea. And all of a sudden they got lots of people, thousands of people, I forget what it was, 5,000 or 10,000 people to do the survey, which was, again, amazing research. And they got amazing insights. And they got a following. They had 5,000 to 10,000 people that were already interested in being a customer. And that was how they raised their first round of financing. It was $400,000 that they raised on the back of a survey. That's incredible. Creating a landing page, again, I said, you know, a one-page website, that's a landing page, just to validate, will people click on the sign up button? And that's what we did when we started Automatic. We just created a landing page and said, get an invite. And that's immediately, you can measure the, you know, the demand for it. You can measure, all of a sudden do user research on the back of that. So everyone who signs up, you're all, you know, immediately getting back to them saying, I'd love to come out and talk to you and understand how you run your business. And then the next thing is creating a prototype. So a prototype is just a fake version of the software. It doesn't work. It kind of looks like what the software will do, and people can push buttons, and it feels like, you know, oftentimes people are convinced that this is actually working software. But to create a prototype is insanely easy. And to change it, you know, so this is when we did Zero, I would have people, you know, lined up for an afternoon doing user testing, and one person would leave or walk out the door. I'd immediately change things around based on their feedback, immediately have it ready for the next person. So in, you know, minutes, I could have a new prototype available or a modified prototype. And compared to, again, this is a mistake I see all the time, people start building code, cutting code. And doing that is like pouring concrete in a foundation. You know, to change anything all of a sudden becomes incredibly difficult, incredibly expensive. So to do it in that design and research phase is incredibly easy and incredibly powerful. And, you know, like I said, anyone can do these things. And I've seen lots of people do them in lots of creative ways. People do them in PowerPoint. People do them in, you know, again, tons of free apps that will let you do this. You do not need any experience to do any of the things I've just described. And then, you know, once you're on the path and you're starting to get, you know, traction, you're starting to get people interested, you know, you're validating this is a real problem. This is a problem that lots of people have, and people will pay money. That's really, you know, all of a sudden you need to double down and really invest in pursuing that. And so my definition of traction is when one customer leads to another, that through word of mouth, through some, you know, through an organic means, you know, people will pay for customers through advertising, and, you know, Grab One and all those Groupons are kind of a famous case where they spent loads of money. Uber is also one of these examples. They're spending way more money to acquire customers than they're actually getting back in return. And so there is a traction there, but it's potentially a false traction. So to me, organic traction is far more powerful, far more interesting, and far more valuable. And then, you know, the other thing people are intimidated by is raising money. And my advice is to avoid raising money as long as you can, and only raise money when you don't need it. If you raise money when you need it, you're screwed. You're getting a bad deal, and you have not proven that you actually have something that's even worth investing in is the reality. So when you have something that actually is that you're earning money, and the time to raise money is when it's holding you back from scaling, from growing. So if we had more developers and we have these key features that we'll get done with the developers we have now, but it'll take 3, 4, 6 months, and we can accelerate that, and all of a sudden our growth curve will just skyrocket, then that's a good reason to raise money, potentially. Again, you know, the other thing about raising money, and we were in a great position, we raised money over, you know, during lockdown, and we're in the hospitality business. And so it was kind of daunting to do that. And, but we even managed to raise money with no terms, which is an incredibly, you know, miraculous thing. So we've got no, you know, when you're going out to investors, they want to, you know, put the screws on you, similar to a bank, that they want to have all kinds of conditions so that they can ensure that they get their money back. But with investors, with startup investors, they tend to want to, they don't just want the money they gave you back, they want double the money they gave you back. And they want to be the first ones paid. And they also want to have the right to invest it, you know, keep their investment in your business, blah, 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 lots of terms and conditions. And we managed, again, because we're in a position where we didn't need the money. We were fully prepared to keep going without raising money. And then all of a sudden you can set the terms. Again, this recurring theme about thinking big but starting small. So dreaming up that ultimate dream, that ideal outcome is so incredibly important. But then starting with the smallest thing, building up through, you know, and this is a constant again. So, you know, this is a problem that lots of businesses get in. They have a big dream. Inevitably, when you're starting out, you have to start small. Like that's, you have no choice. But then once you get traction, once you start growing, then all of a sudden there's this tendency to grow for growth's sakes and build a big team because it's impressive that you have a big team. And it is, you know, it is a fallacy. It is a trap that I've seen so many companies fall into. And I definitely feel like Xero fell into that. I know that Xero fell into that. And that was one of the reasons I ended up leaving, was that we grew from 300 people the next year to 600 people to 1,200 people. And that growth is just, you know, rips the culture apart. You just can't handle it. You're spending more time dealing with all these people than you are dealing with the actual business and your customers. So you're dealing with all this internal difficulty of just absorbing new people. It's not like they're necessarily bad, but if they are bad people, you know, that's even more destructive and more distracting. And so that, you know, for me, that was, you know, huge takeaways: stay lean, stay small. And that is ultimately what you're trying to do, is the biggest impact for the least effort. And people really lose sight of that. They want to, you know, their ego wants the company to be big and yada, yada. And it's like, no, you want to stay small and do small things and stay focused. And, you know, pacing yourself is another super important thing, that realizing that it's a 10-year marathon, that any startup, realistically, it takes about 10 years to really hit its stride, hit its real success, and grow to be something significant. And so that's daunting. 10 years, that's 10 years of your life that you're, you know, looking at. And that's what investors expect. They expect you, you know, if you're going to be doing this, you're in it for 10 years. So you better do something that you really love, and you better pace yourself, not, you know, burn up all your energy, burn out in the early days, and do all-nighters. And, you know, so really realize that you have to pace yourself like in a marathon. And, you know, the other thing about doing something is, you know, as little as possible, but you're still making something extraordinary. That's still, you know, you're always aiming, even when you do a little thing, a little feature, it's always, I'm always aiming to do what is extraordinary about this, what is game changing about this little thing that we're doing. And it's so achievable. And we found that over and over and over again throughout my career, and particularly at Xero. We would have this big, grandiose release, and it was the little thing that people dealt with every day, and you took, this thorn that they stepped on every day, and you removed that, and that got all the attention, got all the love. And so again, you can do extraordinary things, on a small scale. The other thing is that people assume that the reward is in the future. I'm gunning for the reward that is 10 years away from me. And again, that is a recipe for failure and misery. If your goal actually is to be happy now. These things, joy and fulfillment, relationships, these are the things that that I'm aiming for. This is what I want. This is what makes me happy. I do not want to postpone this. The business that I'm creating the intention is that it creates all these outcomes. And it should be creating them now, not in some future date. If it's not creating it now, then what is the point? If I'm miserable, if I'm grinding it out, if it's just an awful experience, why would I do that? My job is to make sure that I'm constantly doing something that I enjoy, and I'm focusing on what matters and investing in what matters. And that is the reward. This is success. So success is not something down the road. If you're doing this every day, if this is your experience every day, you're killing it. You are nailing it. You are massively successful. And it doesn't matter what your bank account looks like at the moment. It doesn't matter, what your ego, what your status is, yada, yada, yada. This is all that matters. And if you're doing this, you're winning, you're succeeding, and that's what you really should be aiming for. The business is just a platform for making all of that happen. I guarantee you will be filled with, again, all these, we're wired to be filled with doubt, filled with fear, filled with dread, to keep us from getting eaten by lions. And so by doubting your doubts, questioning your doubts, it's a really great way to cope with that. And the best way that I've found is to have lots of options. And when you feel cornered, when you feel like, I doubt we can do this, there's a barrier here, there's a hurdle, then all of a sudden that's this amazing opportunity to get creative and come up with these crazy ideas. What if we did this? What if we did that? Absolutely, and allow yourself to do that and open up possibilities. And then all of a sudden you have choices, you have options, and some really interesting options, inevitably come out of that. And, a great source for coming up with these options and ideas I've always found is through customers. So staying in contact with customers, being inspired by customers, going out and talking to them, seeing how they're doing things, seeing how they're enjoying things, seeing how they're succeeding. And same thing with the team, like what are they doing? What ideas do they have? Where just farming ideas, harvesting ideas from all these amazing resources that you have at your fingertips, rather than kind of feeling like you have to have the answers and, it all has to come from, I don't know what. This is definitely a team sport. And this is, for me, this is also just reminders to myself that I have to do this. Like, it's easy to fall into this trap of like, I'm stuck. And, again, a theme that I've just been hounding on throughout, but this quote really sums it up, that success is not key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. You're doing this to be happy. So don't sacrifice happiness to aim to be happy. Make happiness your daily goal. That is your goal every single day. It is it's your daily mission. So I just wanted to end, oh man, I'm pretty much done. Um, these are a few books that I've found. I tend, I don't love business books. Um, so these are, to be on my list is pretty exceptional. And the first one, Derek Sivers, he's American, but he's now Kiwi and he lives here in New Zealand. It's a great book about him. And again, all these themes about he was a musician and he accidentally created a company that was selling CDs. And he was like, I get to write the rules. This is my company. I get to decide how these things are done. And so it's a really great story and a great, there's great insights through that book. Getting Real is very specific about software design and creating software that people will use and how to do that. When we started Zero, that book came out when we started Zero, and it was just like, this is the blueprint right here. This is exactly how we're doing this. And then Rework by the same team is about, again, building a business that is not the stock standard boilerplate formula. We have to have a big team. We have to have this. We have to have that. This is the way business is done, yada, yada, yada. It's about, again, you define the rules and break these stupid rules that, have been kind of cultivated in business from the military. A lot of it is this kind of top-down command and control mentality and culture that is super toxic. And so it is thinking about, different ways of organizing and structuring your business. Again, so that just came out like when we started Automatic, and again, it's been kind of really profound. It's not how good you are, blah, blah, blah. It's more of a marketing book. And again, really kind of a philosophical approach to marketing, and again, a great book for doubt, helping you learn how to doubt your doubts. And the last one, 1,000 Names for Joy, has nothing to do with business at all. It's like this woman, she has a profound story where she was suicidal for years and then had this awakening, had an epiphany, and kind of figured out a simple way of living and a simple tool for living that I have found to be profound myself. And it's basically that, like, if you look at any Alan Watts or what's the guy, The Ego is the Enemy book, Ryan something or other. So that there are these lots of books about just living life philosophy. I found this to be the best one. It just is super profound. And it really, again, it is finding joy and happiness in the moment, in everything. Everything that happens, there's an opportunity for joy and happiness. And so that book for me has really helped me really understand and manifest that in a much deeper way. All right, that's everything I've got, all my wisdom, common and uncommon. I will never leave a room until I get a few questions, so I would love to get some questions. Fire away.
How would your hospitality team describe you as a CEO?
I'd heard from my co-CEO that one of our developers has described it as the best professional experience of her life. So that's one metric. I think that it is a very collaborative environment that we nurture. And I think that we were interviewing someone, we've been interviewing a few people recently, and I was really pleased that they were asking about our culture. And it's an interesting question because I had written our manifesto, our guiding principles, and that was the first thing I did when I decided, okay, I'm joining this business. And I feel like we're living them. But this question about culture has been interesting to me because we're all remote. And so there's not this same, like when people ask about culture, it's kind of like the team and you're bonding, that kind of stuff. And we don't have that kind of classic traditional culture. And so the other thing that I realized was that, so my son works for us as well. He's a student at Massey studying design. And he's also said that this has been, his best experience professionally as well. And he's actually had a few. And so I remember when he did his first internship, and it was at a startup. And the thing he was most looking forward to was being surrounded by people that he could learn from, and that could be mentors. And he was disappointed that when he started, they were just transitioning to going to all remote. And that for him was, a real kind of letdown and a disappointment. And so the interesting thing for us is that most of the people in the business are, we don't have any, my son is the only kid in the business. But we have some young people, but they're mostly in their, late 20s and up. And so they're not necessarily looking for the same things that 20-year-olds are looking for in a working environment. Because I remember it is that camaraderie that you make some of your close friends, future friends in work, and that there's this especially in New Zealand, Friday drinks is just a great tradition, and where you really get to connect with people and kind of let off steam and all that, and that we don't have any of that. And so that's been something interesting that, we need to actively start figuring out if we need to address that, which I feel like we probably do, and then how we address that. So I don't know if that answered, I don't do, so we're not currently doing 360 reviews and stuff like that. And that is one of the other things. Is I think we're not doing one-on-ones. We're doing lots of team meetings on calls. I'm not doing one-on-ones, and that's definitely, something that I feel like I'm neglecting. So yeah, it's a good reminder.
You mentioned something about the Beastie Boys.
Uh-huh.
So that debacle actually ended up launching you to more success anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But you said you made something that wasn't released because of the band. What did you guys create for Beastie Boys?
So it was a CD-ROM. Does anyone know what a CD-ROM is? A CD-ROM is this ancient technology that's a disc. And so what we did was we put video on this. This is at a time when computers, this was the first video on a computer, 1994. And we also connected it to the internet again, so we had Internet Explorer version 1 on the disk. And so mostly it was video. And most of it was actually video from the vaults, video from a friend of theirs would shoot video of them rehearsing and shoot video of them backstage and concert video and outtakes and stuff like that. So it was tons and tons of, as a fan, it was like my, again, my dream. This was what I wanted. I didn't want music videos. I wanted all the behind the scenes and lots of, there was a whole, one of them is a Zen Buddhist and, had a whole foundation, and we put content around that. But yeah, so it was mostly videos, and actually it also had songs on it. So it had the original version of Intergalactic, which is hilarious if you listen to the original versus the hit when it came out. They're quite different songs.
So it ended up getting released then?
No.
What have you created?
No.
So is it still available?
There's
So
if you go to skyrise.com, there's a video on there of that project, so you can see it. That's how you can see it. And that video actually shows about a third of the content that's on the disc. And actually, so the Beastie Boys just wrote a book, and it's mentioned in the book, and they mention it in glowing terms, and I'm just like, and I still don't know why it was.
Kia ora, Philip. My name is Mika. I have two questions for you. Firstly is, how were you able to envision something that didn't exist yet, but also keeping in mind that it takes consistency and patience.
Yeah.
And my second question is, what is your greatest failure?
You know, I'll start with the first one. The last time I was in Gisborne, which was 16 years ago or so, kids were quite small, and they were playing on the beach, and I let them play on the beach and took a wander down the beach. And so, I mean, it's not my greatest failure. I don't know if that's, but that right now feels really raw, and that, you know, I fucked up, and that I can't believe that so things like that with my kids, it's like dumb shit I've done with my kids are my biggest failures. So coming up with an idea for, you know, the future, imagining the future, it's interesting because when I was in school at university, I was just like gushing with ideas, because it really was the dawn of technology, you know, modern technology. So it's like everything is going to change, and I can see it. It's obvious. It's inevitable. And so and all I did was, what do I want? So like I said, I wanted a Walkman that, you know, I don't have to put cassettes in, that I can just push a button and there's a song, and I can listen to any song that's ever been made instantly with a push of a button. And I found, really interestingly, that like on my break after I left Zero, that every app, you know, there's an app for everything. And it was really frustrating to me that, you know, all the things I wanted to do. And so I had, you know, years and years of all these ideas stored up that, you know, need to be done. And it's like, shit, they're all done. And the reality, though, is that, that there's, I think, part of that is just my age, and that I'm too jaded now and too experienced with the technology and the world to see opportunities that I'm sure my kids see, that, you know, ways combine, and it's just combinations. It's combinations of things like, I have that, I want these things to be together. So I have music, I have, you know, technology, make them together. And again, being fearless about it, dreaming up like science fiction, like what, if I could wave a magic wand, and that's with Zero, we were like, if I can wave a magic wand, what would we do? And so that when I realized that bank reconciliation was the key to everything at Zero, I didn't know how to crack the code on that. I knew that it had to be this magic, just click a button and everything. I wanted it to be a game-like experience. And I didn't know how, I was struggling with that. And then one day I played, my son at the time was 3 years old, and he would, every day after work, he would insist that we play the matching game, card matching game. So there's a deck of cards with pairs, and you put them face down, and you have to find matches. And as we were playing this one day, I was like, this is a bank reconciliation we're doing. And I love this game. Like, I would come home exhausted and not really wanting to, you know, play this game for the billionth time. But once we started it, I got that dopamine hit, and I was like, ooh, that feels good. I found a match, and like, again, we're wired for that. Like, that feels good, and I want more of that. And I was like, this is the game. This is the game that I've been looking for. And so I created an interface. I designed an interface, and, you know, I designed it. I just put a box here, a box here. Those are my two cards. These are transactions that match, and I put an OK button in the middle. That was my first design. It was just a gray box and a white box and a button in the middle. And it was just, you know, what does that vaguely look like? And then I fleshed it out more, and, you know, you iterate, kind of keep working at it. And I showed it to Rod and Craig. Craig was the CTO, Rod was the CEO. And they were like, this, you know, so I don't know if anyone knows bank reconciliation has ever used Zero. So it was pretty much what exists today. And they were like, wow, this is amazing. This is out there. This is pretty out there. Like, you know, this could be cool, but maybe not. And I was like, I agree. I completely agree. I have no idea. This could be completely daft and delusional. And that's why we're doing user testing. So I'm going to bring a bunch of people in. And so we did user testing, and the first person came in and we sat her down. And when we got to the part that was, you know, the first part of it was kind of traditional, the way things are done. And then she got to the bank reconciliation part. And, you know, you just observe, you just ask questions. You know, you don't even try to ask questions. Just all you want to know is, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? And what do you expect to happen when you do that? And so that's all that you're looking for when somebody's interacting with the prototype. And she got to the point of the bank reconciliation. She's like, I don't know what I expect. Like, I'm not sure. And so the screen came up. She loaded her transactions from this bank account. And she didn't quite understand it at first. And she was like, oh, I think I understand. I get it. Like, I had to go download that from my bank and then import it. Okay, good. But I'm not sure what's going to happen. And then the screen came up, and this was the moment of truth, like, drum roll. And she was like, are you telling me that has automatically matched my transactions? And all I have to do is click OK? And I was like, I can't tell you anything. You tell me. You tell me what's going to happen. And she was like, yeah, no, I think I click OK, and that's going to do it for me. And I was like, good, try it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And she was like, oh my God. And she just went down through the rest of the prototype. She was like, when is this available? I want to sign up right now. How much does it cost? All the things that you want to hear. And she left the room. And fortunately, Rod and Craig were in the room when that happened. And I was like, and we were all like, oh my God. And I said, hang on, that was lucky, you know, first shot. The rest are going to be, you know, just wait for it. Like, nothing is ever this good. And we had 6 more people come in, and it was exactly the same. Weirdly, one person like had ESP and actually predicted on the next screen there's going to be these things that match up. He was an engineer, and he worked in banking, so it was fascinating. And so to me, it was, you know, grand slam, away we go. And so we sat down afterwards, and Rod and Craig were like, you know, this is really cool, and that's amazing. But do you know how hard it is to build this? And I said, yes, I do. Do you want me to code it for me? Is that for you? Is that what you're saying? And that did not go down well. And they were like, if we build this, we're going to build a bank reconciliation system. We won't be able to do all the accounting things that we need to do. And, you know, fight as hard as I could, we were not having a bar of it. And so then I ended up designing an alternative version, which was essentially standard bank reconciliation, where you have to take a piece of paper and, you know, that you get in the mail, and go look at your screen, check it off. So we did user testing, brought people in. And this was something that happened in the first test. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going over. And don't be afraid if you need to go. In the first test, we got the same thing. When they got to the point where traditionally you have to get your statement, everyone was like, this is the part I hate. I don't want to do this. Can I leave? My kids have to be picked up from soccer right now. Just, you know, aggravation and aggression. And we said, no, just hold in there and just hold on. And so they would say, I don't have my statement. Like, how do you want me to do this? We're like, here's your statement. Treat this as your statement. And they're just, you know, death stare when you put that in front of them. And what we observed was that they, on nearly every transaction, they made a mistake. They wrote the amount wrong. They wrote the date wrong. They wrote the contact wrong. Nobody in that round of user testing said, how much is this? When can I sign up? I want this now. Not a single person. And so fortunately, Rod and Craig were also in the room for all of that. And then, so when we were all done that, I was like, okay, what are we doing? Because I know what I'm doing. And they said, absolutely, we're doing the magic version, that we will not get any customers because it's no different to what they have right now. And they saw that user experience. So the technology isn't very different. It's pretty much the same technology. And we didn't change accounting or anything like that. What we changed was the user experience. And the user experience was click a magic button and that software magically does it for you. And so, why was I telling that story? What was the question? Oh, the visioning. So dreaming this ultimate dream. Start with a magic solution. Start with the like, this is impossible. Nobody's gonna, this is gonna be impossible to do. Start with that. Because you can always bring it back. You can always scale it back. But if you don't start with that impossible, you'll never see what's possible. You'll never see and it's amazing when you picture that, when you envision, so that was 15 years before the iPhone came out. So the reason I got that internship was I was at school and I designed an iPhone and an iPad. I still have the photos. You can look on my website. And because I wanted a device, I was familiar with computers. I used computers, and I knew that it's inevitable that this is going to get shrunk down. And I wanted to go traveling around, Europe and stuff. And I wanted to have something to take photos with, something to play music with, something to have maps on it. And it was just because I wanted those things in this fairy tale that you can come up with these ideas. And then it did take 15 years for that to become a reality. But it's pretty amazing to see it. Like now this thing is in everyone's pocket in the room right now, and everywhere around the world is pretty incredible.
You mentioned that when you were scaling Zero, that having more and more people come on board was distracting for you. Can you explain a bit more about that and how having more people come on was not helpful?
Yep. So the theory is that adding more people, and I heard this all the time. We need to go faster. We need to go faster. So we're going to hire people. Hiring people makes you go slower because you have to stop the work that you're doing and train these new people. They don't know your software. They don't know, your culture. They don't know anything. So it's weeks out of somebody's time to onboard a new person. And when you're hiring at that scale and that pace, it's inevitable. You're hiring some duds.
Yeah. Do you know what the recruitment company that you would have used for Zero?
It would have been, there would have been definitely heaps of them, but it was also, just direct. And so, I was in charge of design, and that was across both product and marketing. And so, 2006, that's when the company was formed. And there's a whole other story. We IPO'd in 2007 with 100 customers, which was quite a crazy coup that we pulled off. So it's really disruptive to the whole company to have that many people join.
So was it actually like 300 people a year were coming on board? Was that the scale?
So in 1 year it went from 300 to 600. The next year went from 600 to 1,200, and that's around the time I left.
Do you know what exactly you said?
Now it's close to 3,000, I think, and so it did definitely slow down. That caused carnage and chaos, that growth, and so they did realize we can't grow that quickly, and it's actually not. It's making us go slower.
I'm interested because I'm from a recruitment background,
right.
So it kind of it's interesting to see that.
In that year, in that last year that I was there, the C-level suite mushroomed into we had a C person for everyone wanted to be C something or other. And every single one of those people was out of the business, I think, except for one. And that one actually is now my co-CEO at Zero, at Upstock. And but that again, that disruption, you know, the whole entire senior management was bad hires. It was, you know, it's just catastrophic.
Bad hires, or like you didn't really have the people that were there specifically to train new hires?
It was a combination of bad hires. Like, so it was people that were from big companies, big corporates, big enterprises, and everyone in the business up to that point were all startup people. They were the ones who built the business. And then all of a sudden they have these people that are like, well, where's my credit card and my, you know, they came in for all the perks. And, you know, I want to have, you know, we're going to have this, what are they, junkets and stuff like that. You know, they were just interested in it for themselves. And it was a complete clash with the people that were like, no, that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this for different reasons. Yeah. So, yeah. But amazingly, you know, the culture was so strong that it did survive that. It was, you know, it was tipsy or whatever. 2015.
So Philip, I think one of the first, you mentioned about being wired for dopamine hits, etc. I think one of the first things I heard about Xero, so I have to ask if you're responsible, was from the Xero user in our company, was that, hey, well done. You know, the dopamine hit of you've done a good job or the tick, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also love the green, because you know, like when you make a mistake, you have to see red.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you made a mistake. But it's green. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So were you responsible for these dopamine hits?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I mean, so, you know, again, I don't want to trash talk Xero, you know, extensively, but the bank reconciliation hasn't changed much since I designed it. It's fundamentally the same exact thing. And, you know, I use it, and now it's been great using it for myself. I'm like, whoa, this is actually good. Like, it was kind of crazy. So it was really impressive and all that, but it could be so much better. Like it kills me that, you know, it's good, but it could be so much better. And this was a mistake that Xero, you know, that again, a reason why I left was that I had a difference of opinion about how things should be done. And my view was we are very focused, and that cash flow is our fundamental, this is what we're about. So bank reconciliation, obviously, so bank reconciliation has, and it still is, the killer feature of Xero. It's why people love it. And if we can just concentrate on making that better, improving that, and improving all the things that are around it that are directly related to that, that gives us far more impact than adding things like inventory. And so Duncan and I were, you know, we were fighting tooth and nail. We should not be doing inventory in the product because it's a whole platform unto itself. And if we do it, we're going to do it badly. And if we do it, we should, you know, commit to doing it properly. And so it's been really interesting now in this business. You know, it's fascinating that we build an ecosystem in Xero of all these, you know, so that you can connect with an inventory system, you can connect with a point of sale system, all these different systems that you can connect with. And that was a big breakthrough of Xero. And so now my new business is actually, you know, I built that ecosystem for my future self. So now I can build a whole business on top of Xero that is utilizing Xero. And one of the things that we're finding is that when we go out to food and beverage suppliers, that some of them have tried to use Xero's inventory functionality. And they're like, it was not up to the task. And again, they built the version 1 of that, and they never iterated it. They abandoned it. So it's just this kind of, the problem I had was more software is not better software. In fact, I have the exact opposite philosophy. Less software is better software. People want less software. As I said earlier, the more technology you throw on people, the more confusing, the more difficult it is, the more challenging. And for you building the software, the more software that you build, the harder it is to make changes, the harder it is to test everything. You know, that even the tiniest little feature involves, you have to do research, user research and testing. Then you have to code it, then you have to do documentation, then you have to support it. then you have to promote it, you have to sell it. For the tiniest little thing, every little thing has, you know, that breadth and depth of, you know, overhead that costs the business a lot of money. So there is no such thing as small features in reality. So you have to be very, very focused about what you do. Are you building a software business?
DNA diagnostic.
Right.
So we have products as well as services, so we use Unleashed
Yeah.
for the products,
Uh-huh.
which leads into Zero.
Yeah.
We also use services.
Yeah. But I mean, you must be building some software, right?
Well, we've been in 10 years, so yeah, possibly.
It's interesting because my biased perception is that all businesses are software businesses in some way or another these days. And like, so even like, you know, you are in a sense a software business that you're using Unleashed and Zero, but it's not quite the same. But like, for instance, e-commerce. So anyone, you know, food and beverage suppliers, and it's been amazing to see some of them have really sophisticated operations. And you know, they're effectively in the software business. They're building e-commerce sites and building whole operational systems for their businesses. And that, you know, so most companies, most businesses are somehow in the software business, whether they're specifically a software startup or not. Any other questions? And yeah.
Just said made one comment, which was don't borrow money until, excuse me, until you need it.
Mm-hmm.
I found it quite interesting because some businesses you actually need are quite capital intensive, whereas others aren't.
Yeah.
You actually can't get the wheels moving until you've actually
Yeah.
made the leap and borrowed money. And the last thing was my question was just startup weekends. You talked about those.
Yeah.
Can I add to that as well?
Yeah.
So I'm looking around the room. This is totally my agenda, Phil. You know, from a regional economic development point of view, you know, talk about startup weekends. You know, I know there's no magic pills. You know, what can we be doing more of within our region and within our ecosystem that, you know, we could accelerate more of the stuff?
Yeah.
And again, appreciate the time. So yeah, on the back of that question.
You know, I'd be really interested in like the great thing, the thing I love about one of the things is that they can be themed around all kinds of different things. So a primary industry here, logging, for instance, you can do a startup weekend that is related to logging. And so you can, you know, again, you can build software for logging that I guarantee. And in fact, you know, Sean, was it yesterday? It sounds like, you know, they're building heaps of software for logging. And that is a huge competitive advantage. And so connecting with that community of software people, both in terms of having insights about, oh, wow, how can we use software to automate things? How can we leverage software in our business, in our sales, and whatever kind of different facets. And a startup weekend is this amazing incubator where you have 10 ideas that are like, whoa, that's incredible. And then the other thing about a startup weekend is that you learn those processes of iterations and starting small. And so that's the thing is like, so a capital intensive business, you know, so for instance, like opening a restaurant is pretty capital intensive. But the way many people do it these days is you start off with a stall at a farmer's market, or you start off with a food truck, and you scale it up and you build it up. And so I do believe that a lot of businesses, you know, so like we know each other through a surfboard company you know, he started small and he just started, it's hardware and it's capital intensive, but you have a big dream and you start small.
I might share something with everyone. So the way I met Phil is through the surfboard company, and it was a relatively young guy, and he was making wooden surfboards. And I heard about this, and I kind of got introduced to him, and we started chatting. And he said to me, "Oh, you know, I'm building a team around me, and would you like to be an advisor on the group?" And I'm looking at Jack, you know, I'm going, "Yeah, I'll you know, I'm keen to support you." He said, "Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 other guys with me. We're gonna get together." And fully expected bunch of 50 surfers sitting around a table, and I walked through the door and Phil was there, and another gentleman by the name of Keith, who's a industrial designer, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, background from Callahan, and I had to take it was incredible to meet Phil and them, but I had to take my hat off to young Jack who had assembled this sort of team behind him, and that was just through asking, getting connected, and I think that's to date that's been Jack's success. He wasn't scared to go, hey.
And he was persistent because when he originally reached out to me, it was a bad time. It was just a really bad time, and I was like, sorry, I can't, get involved. But he persisted, and I'm very grateful that he did.
Your people are your best asset, aren't they? You've really got to
Yep.
make sure that we get the right people.
Exactly. And it's awful when you get people that aren't a good fit. Cool. I think I'll wrap it up. Thank you very, very much.
We're over time, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for
Appreciate
hanging
you
in
coming.
there.
And thank you, Phil. It's been awesome. We appreciate your contribution coming up here and sharing with us. And maybe we'll get you to a startup weekend.
Yeah, cool. That'd be awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.